everybody. Welcome back to the Attachment Point News Roundtable. We have a familiar face here, an OG guest, OG buddy for myself, at least around Insurtech. Stephen Goldstein, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Brett. Nice to be
Absolutely.
back.
Of course, of course. Yeah, we had it fired up. Stephen wrote a great article that was kind enough to release on Insurance Nerds. Talked about all the trends from 100 years ago that are oddly paralleled right now. And then I just had to hit record because we would have rambled for 20 minutes about, our history. But yeah, man, thanks for coming back. I know you've had a lot of adventures the past year and a half. Just wanted to check in.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And you and I have been chatting a lot over the last 6 years since we first met for coffee in Long Beach. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey, I think, for both of us. And especially the last couple of years have been definitely interesting as I kind of got back into more of my entrepreneurial flexing of my life. So looking forward to talking about some of the things that I've been up to, some of the trends that I wrote about in those articles, and what you've been up to too. So should be fun.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I see a bull, on your chest right there too. Speaking of entrepreneurial adventures and good contacts that we have. Yeah.
Yeah. So joined the advisory board at Pro Navigator in September this year, or I guess last year, with Chris Cheatham and Jen Byrne. We were recruited and kind of been chatting with Joe D'Souza, who's the CEO and co-founder over there. Really cool solution. They've had a lot of great traction in Canada. They brought on their first US customer last year.
Nice.
They raised 10 million in Series A over summer last year, which was, in that environment that people were raising in, it was just really awesome to see that happen and the trajectory they're on. So some really good plans for this year with them, and just doing our best to help them out as their advisors. So
I'm missing my little like squishy bull. If I was in the actual office. Yeah,
here,
there you
I'll bring it for you. I
There you
got
go.
mine right here,
I
so we're
appreciate
good.
it. So before I hit record, we were mentioning, yeah, like it was exactly 6 years ago. I kind of got pulled away to a job that was like insurance adjacent. Steven's like, "What are you doing? Get back to insurance." And then when that job kind of wound down, Steve and Nick were the ones who were like, "Hey, just go for it. Work on your own thing. You can get projects." And thank you. It's been awesome being able to stay independent, help companies like Fineo, Marble, contribute more to insurance nerds. Like it's really cool to live in this ecosystem. And I was laughing that I got into insurance because I thought it was unsexy. I grew up around a bunch of commercial real estate guys. I was like, man, it's a bunch of bleach tooth dudes trying to get through the same door. Little did I know the strategic, relationships and everything else. This industry is no joke. But yeah, what kind of originally brought you back from Asia, and then, what's got you really excited right now? Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because you say, a lot of people look at insurance and I think they think of just like dealing with
Quiet.
the claim
Yeah.
getting charged premium or whatever, and all the advertisements they see on TV. And it's like, not for many people, not the sexiest business. But I know for me and for you, like for me personally, it's brought me around the world, literally, in 3 continents and I think 6 or 7 different countries. Been able to work on a variety of different things, been able to meet people all over the world. So I still think it's a great industry. I know Tony Kanyes is big on it, and a lot of us are, we're all preaching to the choir. What brought me back to the US 5 years ago was actually my parents. Just watching them get old. I'd been overseas for 8 years, and they both visited me in Malaysia kind of separately. And watching them both limp off the plane and saying to me, we know you like gallivanting around the world, but it'd be nice if you were a little bit closer. So came back, 5 years ago, almost 5.5 years ago, kind of stumbled into the US Insurtech landscape. Obviously, a lot of people know that I was working at RGA, RGAX, and left about a year and a half ago. So since then, been working on a variety of things. I call it kind of my portfolio approach to life. So I have started as an advisor with 2 firms. Pro Navigator is one, Fineo is the other, as you know, because we've been working together there for the last couple years at RGA, and now the
Yeah.
last year and a half outside of it. Being an advisor to startups or to Insurtech is a great opportunity, just to really be part of the overall strategy and then being able to flex where needed. So, sometimes, the startups or the Insurtechs I'm working with are saying, "Hey, Stephen, we need help with maybe this strategic
Mm-hmm.
offering that we're looking at, maybe product market fit, maybe introductions. And sometimes it's more of just the founder or somebody in the executive team just calling me and just you know just using me as like a sounding board or a venting board, right? Saying I just need to get this off my chest, and that's what a good advisor should be there to kind of flex themselves
Yeah.
across the landscape. I've also been doing some consulting over the last year and a half. Worked with a carrier, a multi-line
Mm,
carrier on a project called Accelerating Innovation Adoption. So it was almost an innovation audit of all the activities they've done over the past 7 or 8 years, comparing it to what I've seen in market from other innovation practices, and then giving them some ideas and tips on how they can maybe further embed that into the organization. Really cool project, really great team, and
mm,
just really fun to kind of get under the hood and help some folks with some things that I've been kind of doing on my side within my previous organizations.
mm-hmm.
And then I was working with another company, um, more on the commercial trucking side of things. New space for me to operate in, but
Cool.
working on kind of business model development, entering new markets, kind of working across the whole spectrum. Interestingly, that allowed me to really see that the life and health and PNC um, parallels are there. It's just kind of a different language.
That's funny.
So really kind of learning that space. And then kind of my third bucket of my portfolio, which because we've had a lot of conversations about this, is getting back to the agency world and getting
Mm-hmm.
back to my roots. So last year I got both my PNC and life and health licenses again. Did it across all lines, so I could do personal, commercial, individual, group. Um, Actually had some conversations about taking over an agency here in SoCal. Went through the whole valuation, due diligence process. Some conversations are still kind of kicking around there,
Cool.
but it was just really interesting to kind of go through the process of that. Really getting under the hood of an agency, and what really got me to look in that sphere again, and it's actually point one in that article that I wrote around
Yeah.
agents being 100 years ago was, as I was at RGA and talking to all my carrier clients there, I've met with about 75 different carriers in North America during the 2.5 years I
Mm,
was there. You saw this shift of everyone going from D2C to agency, right? And whether they were captive agency or independent agency, they were really trying to double down their efforts to, help that intermediary distribution. And then you see with the pandemic, while like insurance applications for like life and health and disability were on the rise, you also saw this desire for people to connect with a human again and want
mm-hmm.
to really talk to a person for that advice. And I just saw that and I said, you know what, maybe I can take my corporate carrier and reinsurer and Insurtech experience and apply that to being an agent and running an agency again. And
Totally.
not only from a relationship standpoint and proposition standpoint, but also, hey, like maybe an agency that I look at or start myself could be a sandbox for some of these Insurtech solutions, or being able to really operationalize and make it better. So a lot of things cooking for 2023. I'll save that for our next pod that we do on when some of those things come to fruition. But it's been a
Yeah.
really cool year and a half to be able to kind of put my fingers, in a few different pies and try a few different things and just see, just see what's kind of the best for my overall kind of life that I'm trying to build.
Yeah, no, I think it's so great to go from what I'll call like abstract surveying back to practical, back to abstract surveying. Even myself, I've kind of done a little bit of like a stretch out wide, and now it's like let's get back to the core game because no matter if it's helping a startup, whatever else, I'm like being a better agent helps all of it. So I think it's
Yeah.
really cool that you've done that. And then, but yeah, kind of touched on the article for a second. Yeah, I thought it was great. Kind of blew my mind. For the people who haven't read it yet, and I'll throw the show notes. Stephen compared insurance 100 years ago to 2020, and this was like a 3-year look back, which was pretty interesting, especially on the flip side of a pandemic. I'll just like kind of airdrop like the main points super fast, and then we can kind of touch on whatever makes sense. We talked about distribution, empowering women, prohibition in cannabis, automobiles enter the market versus telematics, self-driving cars, macroeconomy, depression, recession, the nature of work changing, factory jobs starting, the 9 to 5 starting versus kind of the explosion 9 to 5, and then mass media communication changing. You know, I probably, I'm on Twitter more than I like to admit, and I'll have my Sling TV, if there's a major world event or I need to catch an NBA game on like TNT, but I'm not watching the nightly news. I think all those were great points and really cool illustration that you put together. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It was funny. When I used to write for Daily FinTech back in 2017, we used to do these, and still quite popular, do the predictions.
Mm.
And I remember the first time I was asked to do a predictions, I was like, how the heck am I going to do that? And I realized, like most good consultants, they try and keep it broad enough that they can, find ways to tie back to whatever they predicted and say, hey, I'm super smart and look at this stuff. And I found a way to somewhat do some of that, I feel.
That's funny.
And so it was funny because when I was at RGA, I was chatting with one of my good friends in marketing, and we were talking about, hey, can we do a predictions for 2020? And I was like, yeah, I want to do something a little bit different though. And I just had this idea, like, let's see what happened in the 1920s
That's cool.
and see if there's any parallels. And what's interesting is, all those headlines that you mentioned, it was more of like themes that I saw happening in then. And
Yeah.
then it was like, really, how do I take those macro themes and then tie that back into what we're seeing today, right? And then the impact on
Hmm.
insurance. So and it was quite interesting because over the last few months, I've just been looking at putting some more content out there for anyone out there, that always likes to put out content. We've got a lot of mutual friends that talk about this. I
Yeah.
was just like, really just like, hey, I need to get some content out there, and I looked at that article again. I said, oh, hey, actually,
There's
we're
something here. Yeah.
we're not too far off. Let's kind of see how it's looked over the past couple of years and maybe assess it and see where we're at now. So
Yeah, no, and it's we were even talking about Insurtech today versus then, and 5, 6, 7 years ago. For myself, I got licensed maybe 9 years ago, transitioned to an insurance role 6, 7 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. And Insurtech was a boogie monster, disruption was coming, but to me the standard guard wasn't really opening the doors, wasn't, and I get why now as an agent. Travelers wasn't like, come here, Brett, write some business when you have no clue what you're doing.
yep.
Luckily I found a group like Smart Choice that kind of is a good intermediary. Um, but the insurtechs that open doors were super helpful. And, we compare business to war to a fault, I think. But, usually the better technology is helpful. So that's why I went there. Um, I don't know. I think we're finding a nice middle ground right now where the legacy guys want to adopt the tech, and I'll call it the front runners are seeing the value of the legacy sort of approach. And we're kind of finding this like mashup. Like, I don't even know if we'll talk about insurtech versus insurance in 3 years. I don't know what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's definitely. And if you were at like InsurTech Connect in September, there was a lot more enabling rather than competing.
The parents
Um,
crashed the party. All the old school guys came in, or
yeah,
yeah.
well, yeah, it was interesting actually to that extent too. And seeing some of the people that have been around for a long
Yeah.
time that are kind of being very successful, which is awesome to see.
Yeah.
I always refer back to, and I know our friends at Surefy.
Cool. Yep.
I remember
Dusty.
those guys kicking around things back in 2016.
Yeah.
And now they're I
They're
think
a
hundreds of
force.
hundreds
Yeah.
of employees,
Yeah.
got lots of money. They're just crushing it. And companies like that have had to go through a lot of iterations, but it's just interesting to see. And like in the first point of that article, when we talk about in the 1920s, it was agents and direct to consumer was like
Mm.
the two ways of selling insurance. You fast forward to 100 years from now or from then, like agents and direct to consumer are the two
Hmm.
ways of selling insurance. Now they obviously didn't have online and they didn't have embedded as it was, but they had embedded through like
Newspapers and
newspapers
yeah.
and whatever else. So it's just interesting. And yeah, I think probably most industries, that are innovating go through this, right? It's new entrepreneurs that come in that say, this company that's been doing this for however many years, sucks and I want to do it better, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's like insurance or banking or, um, selling shoes
Yeah.
or, clothing or you name it, right? And then it's all of a sudden, well, hey, well, maybe as these entrepreneurs launch these businesses, they say, hey, well, actually, whatever this business is, it's not that easy to go and get new customers. Um, and then they realize, you know what? At the end of the day, maybe it's just those companies that have been around for a while that maybe they can just use our help in making their solutions better than us trying to like just try and take market share from them, right?
I think
Um,
it's just maturing, right? Like to a degree. And you forget that like your parents were kind of hippies at some point, like we're all sort of going through the process.
my
Yeah.
parents were definitely hippies at a certain point, so I love you guys, but
Yeah, yeah, same. Um, yeah, I think it's good, and I think you're just seeing what had worked and what will work, and human nature is human nature. I do think the collision of these outside forces in insurance is super helpful, and I think more money is coming because it is such a big industry and institution. And I think as I say that, it's generally helpful. Like you remember the purpose of it to keep things whole and keep things moving and be as competitively priced as possible. Um, talking to Diko Wagner, she had mentioned we're moving towards risk mitigation over risk transfer. I think that's super interesting and helpful, rather than just shifting money to solve different problems. In California, maybe it's rooftop sprinklers, maybe it's, whatever else. I think there's even some state mandates to help be proactive on risk prevention, which is
yep,
really cool. Um,
yeah,
you know, the IoT stuff for the life side. Yeah.
yeah. I think all that stuff is conceptually very interesting.
Okay.
Um, um, the it's all about the implementation of it, right? And what ultimately what the consumers want from it, right? And I think as we sit in our insurance seat, right, we say, yeah, if we can help our consumers be more preventative and protect themselves from even ever needing to have a claim, well, then they're going to be happier because they're not going to have a claim. And we're going to be happier because we're not going to have to pay out that claim, right? But in all actuality, if you give your client these, well, a lot of consumers, right, want insurance for the insurance,
Hmm.
right? And they look at the bells and whistles as just like either bells and whistles or something that's going to distract them
Yeah.
or detract them from the actual core of the insurance product, right? If you can make those, whether it's a wellness solution for health or life insurance or disability or whatever, or a caregiver solution for long-term care, or a telematics solution for automobiles or trucking, or IoT solutions for homes or properties, or you name it. Um, if those can be implemented and given to the consumer, whether the consumer is an individual or a
Hmm.
business, in a very lightweight, easy to use fashion, and it's almost, they see it as part of the insurance and not just like something, that's going to be clunky, and it's actually really going to give them benefit, then awesome. The biggest problem with insurance, and this because you sell it, and it's not a tangible thing, right? Like
Yeah.
I buy iPods, right? Or AirPods, iPods. I buy AirPods, and like I know where they are. I
Yeah.
can feel them. I can touch them. I know when they're broken. I know when I need to get them replaced. Insurance, I get a piece of paper that gives me a promise that if something crappy happens to me
Hmm.
at some point in time, I'm going to get some money for it, right?
Hmm.
So like you get this piece of paper and you don't even, you're hoping that you don't have to use it,
Yeah.
right? And then if you have something that is a preventative solution, then you're thinking about your insurance that much more. Like, does someone really want to think? Do I, as an individual consumer, want to think about risk prevention all the time? Probably not. I just want to like
Yeah.
live my life and know that I'm taken care of if something happens. So again, it's not to. Sorry, I jumped on that point.
No, no, I think it's a great
I
point.
it's definitely, I love those types of solutions. I think we'll continue to see them. It's just how do you make it seamless for the consumer from a onboarding perspective as well as a use perspective to make sure that like, hey, this is not something that's going to be um, a bad experience for me because there's already enough negative connotation with
Yeah.
insurance already. Um, but if all of a sudden like I have, if I'm a truck driver and in order to get a policy, I have to have a camera looking at me because we found that cameras looking at the driver makes them safer.
Yeah.
And the only way I can get that policy is if that camera's looking at my face. Well, a truck driver is going to be like, I don't want that. But if you have a camera that's outside facing and that's not looking at me, but I can see that is to prevent me from hard braking or something
Yeah.
came into me that maybe the telematics device couldn't couldn't necessarily read, and it's also not watching me all the time. Okay, maybe that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
And there's not like it doesn't make me feel like I'm doing something that is overly onerous, and it actually does protect me in a better way.
Well, I think to kind of like maybe close the loop on everything, um, I'm going to drop one more name. I'm not going too crazy today. Mike Simons from Driveway.ai said it was a game changer when this did telematics instead of like the OEM port. You
Yep.
know, if you can do step tracking maybe via an app on your phone versus a watch that may or may not break or may or may not report, as seamless as it can be, as effortless as it can be, people are behind. I mean, there are little things I need to do for my house I've needed to do for like or a little rental apartment, like months, you know what I mean? So to give people extra homework assignments can be kind of brutal. If it's an app that they download to like look at their policy and they can toggle something on to save money, that's fluid. Um, and I'm happy to hear you think the agents aren't going anywhere. I still got my little card. Still learning the game, learning the craft every day. But yeah, man, no, thank you for always being a great influence. I think people who have done the frontline blocking and tackling up to the 10,000 foot view and just your experience RGAX touching all those companies, all those carriers now coming down and strategically helping, is really cool. I've always enjoyed our conversations. I appreciate it. I look forward to the third episode of this and many more years of causing trouble and helping people win, really. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. You're always a positive force in the industry, always
Yeah.
propping people up. It's always good to see it. I've loved watching your journey as well, man. For those of you, I know Brett kind of went over this really at the beginning of the podcast. Like when I met him, he was selling like HR tech or something,
Yeah, it was like
and and
it was interesting.
and he's like sitting there telling me how much he loves insurance, but he's working for this HR firm.
Yeah.
And I think it was our second meeting up in LA at a Shake Shack. And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you clearly love this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
why are you working in HR? "Oh, yeah, I don't know." And now, well, who
A
doesn't
few
know
cycles
broker? Who
later.
who
Yeah.
doesn't know broker Brett, right? So I just love watching the journey and seeing kind of where you're gonna land and how it kind of continues to evolve too, man.
I'm
So
just having a good time. Yeah, you and Lamparelli were very critical on me staying independent, so I appreciate the nudge and the confidence that I could, keep the lights on. How should people chase you down? What are the best ways? And I'll definitely throw the article in the notes too.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. LinkedIn, Twitter. If you want to email me, it's steven@tetrag.co. But yeah, just as with you, always open to hearing new ideas, trying to see how we can help people out. Um, just trying to make things better for our overall industry and customers that use our products. So
If you find yourself in LA, chase us down. We're around.
if you
So
find yourself in LA, definitely give us a holler.
it's good stuff, man. Thanks for coming on, and thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, BB.